Entering the Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy. Right now, get you a deposit match of up to $250. And hey, if you're going to be drafting a ton of teams in Best Ball NFL this year, you draft over 250, meaning you get some rake back. You draft over 1,000, you get even more rake back. The people have been demanding it. So if you're doing a bunch of lineups, use code Mayo in a bunch of drafts. Get some rake back on that.
Hey, whatever the people demand, for sure. I've been doing a ton of Underdog Best Ball drafts, and can't get enough, man. It's draft season. We're getting closer to football season, and why not? I mean, I tell people all the time, like, it's almost like mocking, right? Just like mock and get uncomfortable in a draft room, do different things, and the more you can do, the better it is.
Yeah, and it does I think it does 1v1 apply to your season-long fantasy drafts because you get a better sense of, because people are doing these now for 6 months before people actually get to their like home leagues or whatever it might be. So any of these sleepers that you thought were sleepers in March aren't.
No.
They're wildly overvalued.
In particular, rookies, right? Rookies will rise, and right now you can get a discount on them, but as soon as they start to ball out in camp, like everybody with, no pads on and shorts, they're going to continue to rise up draft boards, so you get early edges.
And the biggest difference, I would say, like even when you're trying to assess ADP between best ball and where guys are actually going to go in season long, the quarterbacks aren't going to go super early in season long like they do in best ball. You need them in best ball to stack up your teams.
Exactly.
And running backs get pushed down a little bit, but that's going to be kind of the inverse, I would guess.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, wide receivers are really pushed up in drafts, especially best ball formats. You're seeing some running backs. I mean, even a guy like Derrick Henry in the fourth round. And I just think in your home league with your buddies, Derrick Henry's not going to go in the fourth round. He's going to be a late second. He's going to be a third round pick. But everyone wants their stacks. They're willing to reach at certain positions. And I get it. I mean, if you get a guy like, I don't know, Brock Purdy, or you get a couple 49ers guys early, you want to complete that stack. So Brock Purdy may be a quarterback that's going 13th, 14th quarterback off the board, but maybe he's going in the 9th in particular drafts because you want to complete that stack. So yeah, everything is a little bit different in best ball, but there's a lot you can take away from it.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I know a guy in my home league who might just draft Derrick Henry in the first round. He's like, Derrick Henry's awesome. Now he's on Baltimore. I'll take him. But you always have that guy.
Always that guy. And you know what?
And he's not bad.
He's not bad. King Henry still had double-digit touchdowns last year playing on one of the worst offensive teams in all of football, with inexperience under center at the quarterback position and a brutal offensive line. Now he goes to the best rushing team in football. So he's one of the biggest offseason winners. There's no question about that.
All right, well, let's jump into it. We're doing your rankings for running backs, half-point PPR 2024. I don't know if I'm going to do rankings this year.
What? You got to do them. You got to do them. You'll do them.
I was thinking about just taking Jake's rankings, like I'm doing with yours
fair.
right now.
And rip 'em up.
I can just go pick through yours. It's been 10 years of Jake picking apart my rankings, which I'm forced to do on like a Monday morning. Maybe we shift the show to like a Wednesday. I can pick apart Jake's for a while. It'll be more fun that way. It's less for me to do.
Less for you to do and more entertaining for sure. You said more fun to rip apart Jake's rankings. I've been doing that for years, and I love battling with Jake, right? And he, I always poke it.
Very
He's
defensive.
right all the time
Very
about
defensive.
everything. So it's really nice to tell him that he has a guy maybe just 2 spots higher than he should be that really gets under his skin. So
Yeah,
I'm cool with that. You can rip apart mine too. I'm here for it.
Throw him completely for a loop. Jake has joined me for the divisional previews. We've been going team by team. We already have 3 of them out, more to come. So just check out Mayo Media Network. All the videos are up there if you're looking for the audio podcast format for it. It's on Apple, on Spotify, under the Pat Mayo Experience. Easy stuff to do. Turn on those auto downloads. Subscribe to it while you're there as well. You got McCaffrey at number 1 in your rankings, half point. Bijan, Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon, Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh Jacobs, Derek Henry, maybe, Kyron Williams, and Travis Etienne Jr. Obviously, these guys are in tiers. Is there anyone close to Christian McCaffrey?
I would say no.
Okay.
He's just in a tier by himself. If there's 2 guys that would be close to him, it would be Bijan and Breece Hall that you saw there because of the work that they can do through the air. They own their particular backfields, right? Taylor and Saquon do as well. Gibbs, we can get into.
Do we know that Saquon does? We assume Saquon
he
does.
does.
But we've seen what the stupid your Eagles do every year.
The tush push. Kellen Moore is now the OC, and Jalen Hurts said 95% of the offense is different. I'd say 5% that's the same as that bloody tush push, but there's no Jason Kelsey. part of doing a tush push is because they didn't have a power back like Saquon Barkley. Like DeAndre Swift is not a goal line back. He lost that role in Detroit a couple years ago. He didn't excel in that role. You want to keep Jalen Hurts healthy. There's no need to be doing the tush push from the 3 or the 5 when you got a guy like Saquon that you give him the money to. And the Philadelphia Eagles have never paid their running backs, right? They tried to cheap out last year with 4 guys. Rashad Penny under $1 million, didn't even touch the field really. But back to the tier question, like Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson. Now that Arthur Smith is gone, we can get excited about Bijan Robinson, right? There's not going to be this Tyler Algier. Tyler Algier had more red zone rushing attempts than Bijan Robinson last year. Cordero Patterson had the same amount of goal line rushing attempts inside the 5 as Bijan Robinson last year. Like, that stuff's just not going to happen with Raheem Morris there and Zach Robinson. Plus, he caught 50 balls last year. Breece Hall, 70-plus catches, roughly. Probably not going to happen if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. Like, it's not going to be the inexperienced quarterback with the checkdowns.
Oh, they also drafted who Cust is telling me is the Yak King out of the backfield. What the hell that dude's name is?
Oh, yeah, Brendan Allen, I believe. He's out there making some noise as a potential 3rd down back. But this is Breece Hall's backfield. The offensive line is improved as well.
Oh, no, it's the Malachi Corley.
Like Malachi Corley.
Yeah.
You know what? I
might take these checkdowns.
He may. I mean,
give me a break.
He may not get the checkdowns, but what I will say about Malachi Corley is that out of all the rookie wide receivers we can get into later on, is he does have a spot in the slot right away. And I mean, I'm not believing Mike Williams. Cuss may, but I'm not believing that Mike Williams can stay healthy as a solidified number 2 wide receiver for the Jets. So he just may fall into a ton of targets. But Breece Hall may just be second on the team in catches.
I mean, I can most definitely see that.
Yeah.
We'll see how that ends up going. If you want to make your own projection, that's what I did. I'm just using Run the Sims, and if you want to do your own custom projections and rankings and go and manipulate everything around, you don't even have to have a subscription to Run the Sims. You just need an email. So go to runthesims.com. If you do want the DFS sub or the prize pick sub or the underdog sub, anything that you want. The prop sniper was a big tool for us last year, which was very profitable.
Nice.
If that's a side you're into, use code Mayo, get yourself a discount, sign up for the annual, get the best early bird package in the biz. But if you just want to make rankings for season long and just say like, hey, if Derrick Henry gets hurt, what can we do with the percentages around? Like, how does that impact Keaton Mitchell if he's back, or Justice Hill, or whatever that might be? It's super easy to do. You can save your results, make different tabs on it, export everything to a CVS. And it's all completely free to do. You just need an email address at runthesims.com. So that's what I've done so far. Like, that's what that's what I was doing for my rankings towards the end of last year too. It's just the slates weren't updated by the time I had to. When you do content, rankings come out I've always done them way too early.
Yeah.
Probably a day and a half before anyone else does, just to do them. And then I get stuck with like, oh yeah, this guy didn't even end up playing by the time Friday comes along. I think I'm going to stop doing that this year.
Yeah, and especially get into these bye weeks and then injuries and everybody's questionable. You get into, week 13, 14, 15. And yeah, I mean, you just don't even know when guys are going to practice in full until Thursday. And I feel like a lot of veteran coaches and veteran players, back in the day when you've been doing this for years, but like if a guy didn't practice on Thursday or didn't touch the field on Friday, that was it. It was GG. He was done. You weren't expecting him to play, but there's times now where the guys are just walking through the portion of practice on Friday and they still have a legitimate chance to play.
So in terms of tier 2, so we don't need to talk about CMC. Guy's great. He's the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
He is the number 1 pick? It's not Justin Jefferson. It's not Jamar Chase. It's not whoever.
No, and I'm a big wide receiver guy. In fact, I'm probably not going to have any Bijan Robinson or Breece Hall or Jahmyr Gibbs. You saw that I had him at 6. He's going in the first round. I'm just not – I want myself an alpha wide receiver. If I did have that first overall pick, I'd probably battle a little bit between CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill and CMC, but I would take CMC – and then, again, when it comes back around, it's potential that if you're a big RB guy, you could get a Derrick Henry or a Kyren Williams as like a true bell cow back at the end of the second, early third. But I like myself a wide receiver. CMC's he's the exception, right? He's the GOAT.
Yeah, of course. And then he'll get hurt in week 1. You'll be like, oh, God.
Oh, no. What are we doing here? Uh-oh. But he was relatively healthy since he's been with San Fran. He's always seems to be questionable on the sidelines here and there. But, man, he's like touchdown every game. This guy's like 20 touchdowns.
And it doesn't matter. It's the NFL. Anyone can get hurt. So
yeah,
take the guy who scores the most points when he plays. That's a really,
don't overthink it.
It was just like remember when he wasn't going number 1? People were like, oh, you got to draft Jonathan Taylor. It's like, no, just draft Christian McCaffrey. If he's healthy, he'll be better.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not going to argue it.
Jake has been arguing with me on these division preview shows because we started with the AFC South that Jonathan Taylor should be number 2.
He loves himself some Taylor. He's a couple years removed from being RB1 overall. I think he had like 18 rushing touchdowns and 20 some odd touchdowns. I wouldn't fight anybody if wanted to take him as RB2. We didn't really see a whole lot of him last year as like his backfield, right? He had the contract dispute, he missed some time, and it was like Zach Moss. Like they kind of just eased him into a workload, but there's no Zach Moss. The one thing I will say is you have Anthony Richardson there, like who had 4 rushing touchdowns in parts of 3 games. It is going to be a run-first team with Shane Steichen calling the shots, RPOs. It's a good offensive line. Yeah, I mean, Taylor's a good running back, right? And he's going to catch 50 balls, but I think that there's a slightly higher ceiling with a guy like Bijan and Brees, a little bit younger and maybe could catch more passes than Taylor.
Well, you'll see a distinction. We've made Meaney's rankings into graphics if you're watching the video version of this show, but I also have the single player boards, which have the Run the Sims projections, which you can go get again for free at runthesims.com. And you said like Taylor should catch 50 balls. We have him at 36 catches.
Is that because Anthony Richardson's a
run?
Right.
He runs.
He
like,
runs.
Instead of dumping off, you run.
Yeah, and it's a really good point. That's why I feel like his ceiling isn't as high as a guy like Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson. I mean, you look at Jalen Hurts, a lot of people thought that DeAndre Swift was just going to continue to catch passes, but career low in terms of targets, receptions, and receiving yards. Why? Jalen Hurts doesn't really check it down. Lamar Jackson doesn't really check it down. That's not going to be a thing with Derrick Henry, but these rushing quarterbacks don't really dump it off.
No, and then you have Bijan and you have Breece Hall. So they come in 2 and 3 in the projections to mimic your rankings. It's just almost like you went and copy and pasted the projections. They're looking pretty
Probably
good.
should've.
Although Kyron actually comes in number 5 in the projections, and you have him down
Okay.
at number 9. I mean, that assumes a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But with Bijan and Breece Hall, is Bijan closer to McCaffrey or Hall, do you think? Do you think Hall and Robinson are pretty tight-knit? Because in ADP, they're going 7 and 8 overall.
Yeah, I think they're pretty tight-knit with each other. Like, that would be maybe even a tier on itself. Like, you got CMC 1, and then we can call Bijan and Breece 2. Yeah, I would say they're closer to each other because, I mean, San Fran is elite offense. We just know they're going to score a lot of points. They're going to beat up on a lot of brutal teams, and CMC is going to get his. And I can't say the same about the Jets and the Falcons.
No, but I guess the one thing with Breece Hall this year, and obviously he played himself back into it once he became the guy, he was the guy, and he was awesome last year. I just don't see that much, I don't want to say check down equity from him. It's just I don't think they're going to be as bad as they were offensively last year.
Well,
even if Rodgers isn't Rodgers, he's like 60% Rodgers, which he probably is. He's fucking 40.
Yeah. Yeah. The quarterback play is going to be much improved.
Like, you're not going to see like random 8-catch games from Breece
Well, this
Hall.
was the thing down the stretch of the season, right? When I alluded to the catches, is there was a lot of dump downs. I think if you look at the game log, there was a game where he had like 11, 12 catches, right? It's not going to be Zach Wilson or whoever the hell was under center for the Jets dumping it down nonstop. But if you look at Aaron Rodgers with Aaron Jones, like Aaron Jones was still a big part of the offense, who's catching passes as red zone targets inside that offense. So he could play a very similar role, and there's going to be nobody that steps in. I'm just assuming that Atlanta's smart and they're not going to mess around with Tyler Algier, which I don't think that they will. But there's nobody that's stepping in and taking any touches away from Breece Hall. But I agree with you 100%. And I'm sure the projections say that, the sim projection. He's not going to catch as many passes or get as many targets as he did last season.
And that's sort of what's on the docket right now. Like, maybe there's an over projection on how many catches that Bijan is going to have. Like, I only have him at a 54% rushing share because I do think that Algier will be involved. Like, he's good enough to be involved. And like, why would you want to give a guy 30 touches a game? Like, that doesn't really happen all that much anymore. And you have to play the fact that maybe Atlanta's still kind of stupid. Who knows?
They may be. I do believe in Raheem Morris, though, and bringing in Zach Robinson.
Why do you believe in Raheem Morris?
Why wouldn't I? He's a good coach, man.
Is he?
Yeah.
He coached the Bucks and he was terrible. And then he goes underneath.
Terrible.
Then he goes underneath
all
Sean McVay and he's good. Maybe Sean McVay's a good coach.
Sean McVay is a good coach. It won't be Raheem Morris calling the shots. It'll be Zach Robinson under the McVay tree. But Zach Robinson, and you look at Kirk Cousins with Minnesota under Kevin Connell under the McVay tree. And I think that this offense will be explosive and run heavy, actually. As many people that want Kirk Cousins to go and sling it 40-plus times and Drake London is wide receiver 10 and Pitts breakout, all this stuff, they're going to run the ball and run the rock with Bijan Robinson. So, I mean, coach speak is silly, but it's one of the first things he said when he joined. Like, why wouldn't we use Bijan Robinson that we drafted in the first round? Like, he's not going to mess around with other backs inside the 10 and things like that. It's just not going to happen.
And they're all in right now. Like, this is their shot.
Completely
Like,
all
the rest of the division is down. You bring in a new coach. You sign Kirk Cousins. I have no idea how healthy he's going to be to start
Tough
the
to
year.
say. Right? He's 36, coming off a ruptured Achilles, and it's not like Rodgers, where Rodgers the other foot for Kirk Cousins is plant foot. Like I don't know how much are we looking into that. I think it's more significant. And Rodgers' injury happened, I think, 2 months earlier than the Kirk Cousins injury.
Well, didn't you hear on this show last year that Aaron Rodgers actually came back in December? He just decided, you know what? It's okay. We're not making the playoffs. I don't actually need to come back. I was 100%.
I was here with you on the desk with Tim when he said that, and then Rodgers was coming back, and it was you and I who just never fully believed that it was going to happen. And then the caveat was just like, dude, when he's close to being ready, they're going to be out of it, so it won't matter anymore. But I still have my questions about Aaron Rodgers.
So do you have Taylor in that tier with Robinson and Hall? Like Taylor, Barkley, that kind of thing? Or is it Bijan, Brees, and then it's a drop-off?
Then it's a drop-off for me. Yeah, I would put Taylor and Saquon in there with Gibbs, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, and Kyron. I think it's a little bit of a larger tier for me in tier 3.
So you don't have A-Chain in there, where he's going 7th at running back, pick number 26 overall, right after Saquon Barkley, before Kyron, 5 picks ahead of Kyron.
Easy fade. In best ball, sure, go ahead. RB6 in best ball formats, you want to shoot for upside? You want to be a little bit different? Absolutely. But what are we doing here? The guy's played like 4 games, and he had 3 or 4 games that were awesome, but they drafted a guy in Jalen Wright who's got a ton of speed. They still have Raheem Mostert on the roster. He's still there. He had 15 rushing touchdowns last year. He was among the leaders in red zone rushing. He's not going away. They're going to use all of these different backs. He's an easy fade, overdrafted for sure. He's a small body that had some injury concerns in college. He had them immediately in the NFL, I think 2 or 3 different times before the season started, when the season started, and about halfway through and then towards the end. So I'm fine with taking these risks in best ball and being a little bit different that way, especially when everybody's pushing up wide receivers. But there's no chance I'm drafting Devon Achane in the first round or second round as my RB1. That just won't do it.
So your tier is Taylor, Barkley, Gibbs, Jacobs, Henry, Williams. So ETN would be after that for you?
ETN would be after that for me, just kind of knocking on the door considering his pass catching upside, but I don't think he's as good as a runner as the other guys.
See our fun new underdog graphics with your name
sharp
on it?
Yellow, look at that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, can't wait to do some underdog stuff with you this year.
Yeah, I don't know how much underdog best ball content I'm going to do. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, well, it's on the board there.
Yeah, it's on the board. No, listen, I'm way more into pick'em.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I hear you. I love
That's
to pick
just
'em as
more
well.
my game. That's what I like to do. I like single player fantasy props.
Me
Are we
too.
going higher? Are we going lower?
Yeah.
When it comes to best ball, I guess my biggest thing and my biggest deterrent, it's funny audience to audience, because I was talking to JJ about this yesterday. I had to chat with him about the challenge, actually. Just
Nice.
privately
Yeah.
talking to JJ just about that. I was like, should we do a challenge podcast this year? We're both kind of into it.
Yeah.
And he joined Underdog just like I did.
Yeah.
We were just kind of discussing we're both taking the complete opposite approaches of how to talk about this product, because he's super into best ball now. He's really trying to, and I mean that makes sense. Season-long fantasy football.
Sure.
I mainly talk about gambling on football.
Yeah.
So a natural pivot for me into talking about the product would be pick'em, because I like
Yeah.
pick'em stuff. And best ball drafts take fucking forever.
They do, and
Forever!
I misspoke when I said that I was going to do some stuff with this year. That's what I'm thinking. Pick 'em. I'm the same way as you. I'm a gambling guy. I love the over unders. They do offer some fantasy scores, which I think sometimes too. When you look into some of
Soft.
those fantasy scores, they're pretty soft. Yeah. So if you like a player and that line is maybe a little bit too steep for you in terms of over receiving yard or whatever it may be, sometimes it's better to go with the fantasy score, and you're going to get there if they have that monster day that you like, especially if they find the end zone.
When Brees Hall gets his 11 catches,
11
you're like,
catches.
perfect. Here we go.
There we go. Giddy up and get my points.
Yeah, you need a Julian Edelman 17 catch for 63 yard game. You're like, yeah, it's fine.
I'll take it.
Let's go with this. So that's the tier 2. So tier 3, let's talk about this, because I think this is where we can get very nitpicky, because I'm with you on everything. I think I would have Jonathan Taylor a little bit closer to maybe Brees Hall, but with Saquon, he's the one I really want to talk about here.
Yeah.
It's a great situation in a great offense. And I guess it really comes down to, you think they might do the tush push less?
Yeah, I do.
Because, is it because Kelsey's not there? Because it would make no sense not to do it, because it works every time. If you're on the 1 yard line, why would you ever run a different play if it works?
So if you're on the one, yeah, I agree. If they're on the 1 yard line, maybe the 2, maybe they do that. But also, I think it hurt Jalen Hurts, man. He didn't run as much. He didn't look as fresh. Like he's on the bottom of that pile every time. Like, and Kelsey talked about it all the time in his podcast. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I feel bad for Jalen. Like, everyone feels bad for DeAndre Swift not getting that touch, but it's more about everyone, 700 pounds on the left side of that line falling down on Jalen Hurts, Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, all those guys. But I don't think they'll do it as much. I still think it's a weapon. They could certainly pull it off without Jason Kelsey under center. But again, as I told you, like I don't remember the last time Howard Roseman spent money on a running back, and I think they're taking the CMC model, right? San Fran spends his capital, they spend on CMC. It gives them that, like Elijah Mitchell and all these other random dudes were okay in San Fran's offense, just like Miles Sanders and DeAndre Swift were okay. They were top 5 in rushing in each of the last 2 years. They were behind that line. But now you got a guy like Saquon Barkley who faced stack boxes arguably more than anyone. In fact, like using some of the FTN data, he was hit behind the line of scrimmage on like 46% of his carries, which was the 3rd highest mark among qualified backs. DeAndre Swift, 27%. Didn't get touched. That was the best mark in football. So now you take Saquon behind this offensive line, and we're going to see some rushing numbers that we've never seen from Saquon, like 3.6, 3.7 yards per carry. That's not going to happen in Philadelphia. Miles Sanders is getting 5 yards per pop. What do you do in Carolina? Jack all.
Lost his job to
Chubb
Hubbard.
And then they drafted another running back. Miles Sanders looked pathetic last year behind an average offensive line. So, yeah, wheels up for Saquon, and even Josh Jacobs. Saw a lot of stack boxes there in Las Vegas last year.
This is where it gets really interesting for me, because I think you can make the case, and I'll make it right now, that Kyren Williams actually should be the next guy on this list, even above Jonathan Taylor, if things break right for him. I think that everyone has Cam Akers in the back of their mind, that everyone they were committed to Cam Akers. We all drafted Cam Akers like fucking morons, and it just did not work out. And the same thing is going to happen this year. But if he comes back, he doesn't even need the same workload as he had last year.
He doesn't.
You just minus him 20% off what he was doing in the second half, and he's going to be amazing.
And you hope, actually, for, if you're a Rams guy or you're a Kyren dynasty owner, or you just like him in general, that's the case. Because my question with Kyren as like a 5th-round running back, didn't test well. It was his 2nd year. He just kind of came out of nowhere. But I was like, man, he's getting touches like CMC. Like, can he handle that over a full course of a season? And he suffered the injury. But when he came back, he was getting CMC-like work. He actually outperformed CMC. Right now, he's dealing with a foot injury. They drafted Blake Corum. It's not just Cam Akers. It is Sean McVay, and he's always drafted a running back, and sometimes he just gets, I don't know what it is with him. Sometimes he just, whether it's riding a hot hand or just using somebody else, like they drafted Corum. I don't think that he's going to cut into any of the catches, but he could, man, this is a guy that got like 25, 30 touches a game. Like he could get 7 or 8 carries a game, and that's enough for me to be concerned. Like nobody else besides Gibbs is really touching into anybody else that you see in the top 12.
Well, okay, so let's make the how don't they get there case, because in terms of ADP, when we're taking a look at it right now, Gibbs is going 12th overall. He's running back 4. Jonathan Taylor is going at pick 17. That's running back 5. Barkley at 21. Devin Achane at 26. Kyren Williams at 31. Derrick Henry at 33. That's the tier that we're talking about. You don't have Achane here. No. I would agree with you on that. But how do they not perform up to this? Well, I think the Jahmyr Gibbs case is pretty clear. That David Montgomery could just steal work from him again.
Yeah, man.
Like he's still there. He's not going anywhere.
He's the closer.
They seem to be like, I remember that I think it was the 1st round of the play. Did they get the bye last year? No, they had to play in round 1, right?
Yeah, they did. They made it all the way to the conference championship game. And do you remember what the play was with their season on the line?
Was it run up the middle with
David Montgomery?
Yeah,
that's how much they love this guy. Are you kidding me? That was their play. Like, and even Campbell said after, like, yeah, we fucked up. Like, you know what I mean? Like that wasn't a great play call. He had more red zone rushing attempts than Gibbs. He had more goal line attempts than Gibbs. They have a great offensive line. When they were up in games, they used him to close it out. There's no question you know that Gibbs is the more talented running back.
Yeah, and he was a rookie last year, so maybe they were keeping him, like they didn't want him to run into a rookie wall. They wanted him to make it all the way through the season because they had higher expectations for what they were going to do. Now they can really unleash him. But I feel like you're buying a lot of that in this price.
You are, and he is, like I said earlier, he's going in the 1st round. Like he is RB3 or 4 for people, even in high stakes leagues. Forget best ball. He is going at the end of the 1st, and again, I think he's the better back. I think he's more explosive. He's going to catch a ton of passes out of the backfield. His usage, there was an uptick in the second half into the playoffs. He was getting more red zone work, but This is a committee or a timeshare rather. It's with two guys, and the other guy that's going as RB 2022 is a guy that's going to get majority of the touches in the red.
So that's what I'm thinking about here. Like, that's how it goes wrong. So, hey, listen, let's throw injury off the board. But I think the injury element that you have to think about with some of these running backs is, what if everyone's healthy, how does it look? If someone gets hurt, how does it look? Because if David Montgomery gets hurt, Craig Reynolds isn't stealing goal line carries.
No chance.
Away from him. However, if Gibbs gets hurt, Montgomery's a top 10 back.
We already seen it.
We know.
Yeah.
So there's that piece of it. With Breece Hall, all things being equal, he's just the lead guy. Bijan is the lead guy. McCaffrey's the lead guy. There are going to be games where David Montgomery gets 60% of the touches and Gibbs gets 40. It's just going to happen.
Think about it. There's a game where they're a double-digit dog or a double-digit favorite. Actually, Jared Goff plays 14 games inside the dome. They're going to score some points this year because the splits are significant. But
so maybe that's a case the other way, that there's enough to go around that it doesn't matter because his upside is still so high. I mean, that is the price you're paying.
That's the price you got to pay. Like, we could say that Dave Montgomery is going to get a bit of a downtick in terms of red zone rushing attempts and maybe doesn't score as many rushing touchdowns, but he's not going anywhere. And that's the way, I agree, that's the way that Gibbs doesn't return value. Maybe we're just nitpicking here a little bit, but games you have to, especially at this point.
Top five running backs. All we got are Nick. They're good players,
right? And that's how you win leagues, avoiding the blowups that could happen for you. So a couple games where they can be up big, and Montgomery's the guy who's getting all those touches, and Gibbs is not putting out RB1 numbers.
And I would say that the case for Taylor and Barkley are very similar. That their quarterback steals all their goddamn touchdowns,
and that's Yeah.
And that's significant. And both those quarterbacks don't check down.
Right. Where a guy like Josh Jacobs,
it's not
Jordan
fun.
Love is not. Jordan Love's a little sneaky.
He runs sometimes
a little bit, but he had 4 rushing touchdowns. But Josh Jacobs should get all that work, right? And there's no AJ Dillon. I know he's still on the roster. He didn't get that work last year.
Hold on. The moment you think he's going to do something because everyone else is hurt, he does fuck all. Yeah. And then when you don't need him to do anything, it's like, we give him 12 touches.
Yeah, Aaron Jones is back. He's healthy. Finally, we hadn't had him all year. Well, it'll be a big Aaron Jones game, and then AJ Dillon runs 2 in from the 5. So you're not wrong there. But Josh Jacobs in a really good spot too. Is a guy that 2 years ago when he led the NFL in rushing, he had a capable quarterback in Carr. Like, he just an accurate quarterback that can move the football. So boxes weren't stacked. And last year he just saw a stack box. I think it was like roughly 46% of his carries. So Aiden O'Connell, there was a game Aiden O'Connell had last year where he didn't complete a pass after the first quarter. So like having Gardner Minshew there, who I do believe will win out between the two, is good for Zamir White. But when you go to Green Bay and you see Jordan Love and all those weapons, the way that he was impressive in his first year as a starter, I think that Josh Jacobs, he could still be a workhorse back and have a more productive season than 2 years ago when the Raiders were just actually middle of the pack in terms of offensive.
So think about it this way. Josh Jacobs currently, and just like how you build a projection out, I have him at a 50% market share of the rushing touches. 11% to Jordan Love, 14% to AJ Dillon, 21% to Marshawn Lloyd, who I expect to. There's a reason that he's there now. They're bringing in running backs to get rid of A.J. Dillon.
Sure.
Although I think it's the final year of his deal, so...
Yeah, and there's like kind of an out with Jacobs too next year. Maybe Marshawn Lloyd is a guy that's getting more touches next year, but catch some balls for them.
So I also have Josh Jacobs as 41% of touchdown market share on the ground, just rushing touchdown market share. He could beat that very easily. He could be the guy that gets 80% of the rushing touchdowns.
And I believe in the offense. I believe in Jordan Love and what he did, man. Like, he looked pretty good last year in his first full year as a starter. He was pretty accurate, and he had the youngest wide receiver / tight end room in all of football. So you got the 2 tight ends now are sophomores, and if Christian Watson can just play, I don't know, like 70% of the games this year.
Did he get a new hamstring?
Apparently Jake told me on his show, and I meant to ask him.
Jake's in there like doing his own massage.
Jake was like, man, did you hear Christian Watson is like, he's developed a new run, like a new way to run that will help his hammies out. I'm like, oh, okay.
What did they put in a ramp to the sidelines? He can play in a wheelchair now?
Yeah, maybe, who knows? But they got Wicks on the roster and Dobbs on the roster. Jacobs can catch passes. I think Green Bay is, I don't want to say they're legitimate Super Bowl contenders, but I think that they're going to be a top 3 offense in the NFC. I could see that.
I just, as an overall, we haven't got to the NFC North division preview yet. They're a really confounding team for me because I feel like they kind of massively overachieved last year based on where they ended up and how close that they came to doing, like, just to completely turning over the apple cart here. And then they didn't do it. But it felt like everything they did last year is where we would have penciled them in for this year.
Yeah.
If things had just kind of, they improved marginally last year. They looked all right. Jordan Love in the second half was awesome.
Oh, he's fantastic. And I mean, people were talking about the Dallas Cowboys defense as being one of the best defenses in football. And he went in there and definitely wrong, but he went in there and lit them up. And you know what? I thought they should have beat the Niners too. I thought they played pretty good.
So my point on Jacobs was it felt like that's not necessarily an under projection, but I think that's a very downside realistic projection if he plays all 17 games. Even with all that in half point, he's still running back 11. So if he overachieves that, he gets to your ranking very easily and can even creep up a little bit more.
Yeah, I think so. And again, it's going to be a better offense for him. It's, he may not get as many touches, but he'll be more efficient with some of those touches. And he's a guy that's averaged over 3 catches per game over the last 3 years. So he's a good running back, man. And I think they're going to give him all the touches he can handle.
I guess my question is, and a guy that you don't have in this tier, who I would have here, I think, is Pacheco. Isn't Pacheco exactly the same thing, but he plays for Kansas City?
I don't think the catches aren't as much. I was banging the drum for Pacheco last year, and it was a great call. I think we started to see the end of his rookie season more work through the year, especially into the playoffs when they won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. And then last year he started off camp running routes, which he didn't the year before as like a 7th round, 6th round rookie running back, where there was still Jerick McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire on the squad. I think CEH is still on the squad.
He's
it doesn't
still there.
matter, but he is, and Jerick McKinnon is a free agent. But I think that's the difference. He's linked to a good offense, the goal line work. He's a really good running back. He runs really hard. Maybe we see another uptick in catches, but he's not going to be in the 40 plus. I don't know what you have for Jacobs for catches, but it's not going to be as close. It's 2 catches a game.
I have them very similar. I have Jacobs at 46 catches. I have Pacheco at 42 catches.
Okay.
I just see them as very similar type players here. And I even have Josh Jacobs 215 rushing attempts. Isaiah Pacheco 205 rushing attempts. I actually think he beats that number if he stays healthy. But what they'll do with Jerick is just sign him in week 10.
They'll sign him in week 10, and he'll be a big factor down the stretch, and they'll have 8 catches, and 7 of them will be receiving touchdowns. And Rashee Rice is going to get suspended for a few games.
Is he?
So, yeah, he will.
Is he?
He will. He'll probably do something else.
Can he stay out of trouble between this recording when we release it and the beginning of the season? That is to be seen.
Yeah, that's
from him. I would have Jacobs and Pacheco, no matter where you put them. I think I would tie them together because I think that they're very similar in that way. Because I see that you have after ETN at 10, you have Mixon on Houston now. Then you have Rachaad White. I would have. Maybe Joe Mixon deserves to be in the same class as those guys because I see their numbers being very similar.
Yeah.
But I think that Pacheco to me is Rachaad White seems like a big outlier here for me.
I struggle with White.
I think I would just bump him down low because I don't really feel like there's any upside with him. If you're drafting him, you have him ranked at number 12. Yeah. I feel like that's kind of best case scenario for him.
Yeah, I would agree with what you just said. He was a big target of mine last year. He was going to roughly RB24. The past couple of years, he's been super inefficient on the ground. I think under 4 yards per carry, and the Bucs have been one of the worst rushing teams. But all of the touches. In fact, second most touches in the NFL last year, 3 behind CMC, and he was top 4 in targets and catches and receiving yards. There's nobody else outside of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. That's the offense. It runs through those two guys.
Trey Palmer would like to have a word with you, sir.
No, they drafted McMillan, who's going to take his spot.
They also signed Sterling Shepard.
Oh, baby, nice.
Yeah, there we go.
Miss out on some of these low-key signings here.
But they also drafted Bucky Irving,
who will probably cut into some of the maybe third down stuff, the catches that we saw from Rachaad White. So yeah, I mean that's probably the max. That's the ceiling, and still not going to be a good rushing team. They lose Dave Canales, who just gave all the touches that Rachaad White could handle. So I wouldn't fight you on James Cook over him either, right?
So James Cook is the biggest outlier between my projections and your rankings. Now, I don't know if I have him hilariously over-projected, but I have him at running back number 6.
Okay.
If you want to make a case for someone, all the Jahmyr Gibbs case, where Jahmyr Gibbs being drafted at running back number 4.
Yeah.
James Cook could have a better season than Jahmyr Gibbs if he's just the starter.
Yeah.
Which we think that he is.
And Gibbs getting his red zone rushing attempt stolen from him by Montgomery, he'll get them stolen from
Josh Allen. Well,
that's the only thing.
He'll get him stolen.
That's it.
He'll get them stolen by Josh Allen in the second half of the year because they'll play nice with Josh Allen and they'll be like, "Hey, don't get hurt.
Yeah.
Stop like
Every
trying
year.
to truck people at the goal line."
Yeah.
And he'll do it. And then like his instinct kicks in. Then he just does it.
When Joe Brady took over, he was RB12 in a PPR format. They leaned heavily on the run. I think the breakout game was Dallas. He had like 20 plus carries. It's like, okay. And that's my one thing with the Bills over the past couple of years. They've just been too bloody one-dimensional, right? They don't run the rock. It's like there was a playoff game against the Colts where they had 2 rushing attempts in the first half, and they were wondering, Bills Mafia wondering why they were down in the game. It's like you just can't have Josh Allen, sling it 40 times and just run himself. You need to have some sort of balanced attack.
They basically had the Will Smith Bel Air offense. Just like Josh Allen, just pass it to Will. You go do it.
Yeah, you do it yourself. And it may be very similar with a bunch of misfits. I think the only guy, I like Cook, especially in a PPR format. The guy that I want in Buffalo is Dalton Kincaid. There's so many question marks with everybody else there in Buffalo, but that's my only thing I would say about James Cook. And touchdowns are hard to predict, but I just don't think he'll have the same type of usage in the red zone as the rest of the guys we're discussing.
I have him at 9 total touchdowns. That doesn't seem
That's
like
not awful, actually. That's
no,
pretty
and that
good.
puts him 201 carries, under 1,000 yards rushing, 47 catches, 430 yards, 9 touchdowns. That puts him for half-point PPR within 10 points of Jonathan Taylor, Kyron Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, and that's a tier in terms of projections, ahead of like the ETNs, Derrick Henrys, Pacheco, and Jacobs. Now, would I take Jacobs over Cook? I mean, I'd have to think about it, I think. And I think they're going very similarly in drafts. Pick number 54, pick number 60, running back 12 and 13. And Pacheco's going a little bit higher than that. But I think that those guys are closer to that Barkley-Taylor tier. And can you make a case for any of these guys? Like Christian McCaffrey, yeah, he can be, let's say he gets hurt week 1.
Yeah.
So who's running back number 1 on the year? How many guys plausibly could be running back number 1? I'd say I'd give like a 5% chance that James Cook is just awesome and he is running back 1.
Yeah. I mean, we could say Bijan, Hall, Taylor, Saquon, Henry.
I don't think so with Saquon. It would have to be such an abnormality
quarterback.
for touchdowns.
Well, Buffalo does the tush push too, just as much as the Eagles. They just don't talk about it that way. Like Josh Allen was almost perfect doing that little quarterback sneak.
True, but they don't rely on it as much as Philadelphia does. Like we're inside the 3-yard line in Philadelphia. Here's the play. It's going to work.
Yeah.
It's usually 2 rushing attempts for the running back in Buffalo. And then when that doesn't work, Josh Allen takes it himself.
It's the same conversation I know we've had for the past couple of years. I mean, 15 rushing touchdowns for Josh Allen. I mean, Jalen Hurts led everybody in goal line rushing attempts. Why? Because of the tush push. And Allen is right there. So, I mean, Cook is a really good back, and if they decide, I mean, they have to, I would assume that the offense looks very similar as it did the last 6 weeks of the season when Joe Brady took over, and that's a run-first kind of offense.
Yeah, so like I said, a 5% chance that could happen if CMC doesn't exist, but like why can't he have Breece Hall numbers?
He could. Yeah, he could. And I think your projection for catches may be a touch lower, a little conservative there in the low 40s.
My projections tend to be very conservative, and then I can be like, no, I like this guy way more. It gives me like an out to push people up and down. Yeah. So Derrick Henry, we haven't really talked about in Baltimore at all. Don't really know what to do with him. It just feels like he's going to have 3.5 yards per carry and 16 touchdowns. Like that's just how it feels like in that offense and like knowing how it works. When do we expect Keaton Mitchell to be back? Mid-season?
Mid-season, I think.
Because he was like dynamic.
Best. He was really good, but it's been multiple years now with that injury. They paid Derrick Henry to give him a full workload. I'm really excited about Derrick Henry. And again, when you look at last year, the Titans were a bottom 5 offensive team, one of the worst offensive lines in football. They had, a little bit of Tannehill, a little bit of Will Levis in there. And now you're just going to the team that, one, ran the ball better than anybody last year. And it's not just Lamar Jackson. Gus Edwards has had, 68, 70 career games in Baltimore, and he's had a really healthy yard per carry number. And he's not a terrific running back. Like Derrick Henry can offer more at the running back position. And also, then you look at the Ravens. They were number 1 in rush percentage in a neutral game script. Ran the ball like 48% of the time. That's what they want to do. And we're talking about all kinds of other quarterbacks and Lamar Jackson and like Allen and Hurts stealing red zone rushing attempts. How about Lamar Jackson only having 5 carries inside the 5? He is not that type of runner.
No.
He doesn't run them, and he had 1 rushing touchdown last year. So all the touches are going to go to Henry, And Gus Edwards had the most carries inside the 5 last year, and he had 12 of his 13 touchdowns were like red zone touchdowns. So now you're just going to take Gus Edwards out and put in. You're going to tell. What if I told you that Derrick Henry is going to lead the NFL in red zone rushing attempts, or lead the NFL in rushing attempts inside the 10? How many touchdowns would you think that he would have?
I said like 16.
Absolutely. His rush. I already hammered the over 9.5. I think the current number is 11.5. He's had double-digit touchdowns multiple times in his career. 16, 17 touchdown seasons. It's probably the best possible spot a running back could go, besides Saquon when we talked about the offensive line. It's the best spot a back could go.
Is there a chance Philadelphia's offensive line takes a big step backwards without Kelsey?
Sometimes
it's one guy.
One
and
guy
you
in the
replace him with
center,
someone
too.
You replace him with one guy who's just not up to snuff, and it all kind of falls apart.
The one thing I will say is that they've been prepping for this for a couple of years. They drafted Cam Jurgens in like the second round a couple of years ago. In fact, Kelsey made that pick for them. He knew that time was coming down. He's like, this is the guy that can replace me. I don't think it's going to take that big of a hit. They were number 1 in run block win rate last year. They may just be, I don't know, 7th best offensive line. Like, I can't see them falling outside the top 10. Like, they still have Delane Johnson and Mile out of there.
Underdog currently has Derrick Henry's touchdowns off the board. They do have 999.5 rushing yards, higher or lower. I would go higher.
I'll go higher too. I mean, he's going to be the closer. There were times last year where he just didn't get the touches in the second half. Why? Because they're down 2 scores. And Tajay Spears was getting out there and catching passes. We know that that's not what Henry does. So, I mean, Gus Edwards got to that number last year, didn't he? Didn't he have like 900 rushing yards roughly? Like, what are we doing here? Like, I would hammer the over on that. Henry is going to have a couple 200-yard games like he did in Tennessee a couple years ago.
You don't think he's like an old man now?
He's knocking on the door being an old man. If
Cuss
I own
can
him in
tackle him.
Dynasty, if I own him in Dynasty, I may flip him. Just like this would be the time to trade high, sell high on him. But I still think he has another solid RB1 camp. Man, I took him in the 4th round in the SiriusXM post-draft. I'm like, what the hell is everyone doing in here? Like, he shouldn't be a 4th round pick.
Who were like running backs that were going ahead of him?
All of these guys mentioned
Mixon?
before. No, I took Mixon in the 6th, so I ended up getting Mixon as my 6th.
So,
but
like,
everyone's just like pushed wide receivers up. That's it. Everyone's pushing wide receivers up. People like the elite tight end type strategy this year. Like Kincaid is pushed up and Pitts is pushed up.
So
Everyone loves
basically,
Laporta.
everyone is drafting how I did in 2016.
Yeah, everyone has caught on to you finally, right? And Kelsey, you were always Kelsey 1st round pick, always wide receivers 1st round pick. I love to build rosters like that as well. I like the hero/anchor RB type strategy. Give me one of these running backs we were talking about, and then I'll attack the position again in the 7th or the 8th round. But yeah, everyone is pushing up wide receivers, and it does create, I suppose, a little bit of a unique build if you wanted to go RB. Like, you can start your draft with CMC and Derrick Henry. Imagine that.
Yeah, or Pacheco or Jacobs
Pacheco
or
or Guy
whoever.
Cook,
I don't know if how it broke down. If I would want to do that, it would depend on the players that were left over.
Yeah, you'd be pretty thin out wide out.
I mean, I would rather have Derrick Henry than Drake London.
Me too, 100%. Like, Drake London's going as wide receiver 10.
10. It's crazy to me.
Would you be shocked if Kyle Pitts had the same or a better season than Drake London?
Or if they just both didn't have great seasons.
Or if they just both
Or if like Darnell Mooney outscored Drake London.
Everyone was chirping the Michael Penix Jr. pick. Maybe we see him this year under center. But one is pick 14 on average, I think, in Drake London, and the other one in Kyle Pitts is in the 60s.
So ETN's going like in the middle of all this.
Yeah. I don't know really what to do about
You have him at 10. He's being drafted at 10. He just seems... I
just
feel
won't
like
have
he's
any
going
shares
to
of him.
fall down drafts.
Yeah.
Because no one's going to be... He'll be like the auto draft pick. The
Yeah.
guy like his bad internet connection. And like the next man up for like the last 2 rounds has been
Yeah.
ETN. No one really wants to take
Yeah.
him for no really good reasons.
No.
He's kind of boring. And it really felt like I owned a lot of Travis Etienne last year. And to watch
You
him...
did well then.
I did, but to watch him, he kind of sucks.
I know. And I was out on him last year. I bought in. Silly me buying
Tank
into
Bigsby,
anything.
who actually sucks.
Who actually sucks. I bought into Doug Peterson talking up Tank Bigsby and him using multiple backs when he was with the Eagles, and I just thought that would happen. I'm like, wow, Tank Bigsby could potentially be the goal line back here in this offense. It just never happened. He hardly touched the field, and when he did early, he had the case of the fumbles, so it just didn't work out for him. ETN is he's kind of a boring pick, but he's going to be among the leaders in catches and targets. And
I don't know if he will be in catches. I mean, the one thing I did notice watching the amount of Jags that I did last year, Dearness Johnson's actually good, and they like to use him in that pass catching role. Like he was a much better change of pace guy than Tank Bigsby was.
Yeah.
And we didn't really see that much Tank Bigsby in the second half of the year. We saw way more Dearness Johnson, and then he started to cut in. Like, without the rushing touchdowns, like, Etienne would just, he has 49 yards, but he has 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, fine. They're like, I will take that every week. That's a hard thing to bank on.
It is, because he was so awful in his rookie season. I guess the first year he didn't play, but his first full season in the NFL, he wasn't great inside the red zone, and that's why I thought that's why I thought they drafted Tank Bigsby to kind of fill that role. And Peterson's talked about scaling back on Travis Etienne. This is not for me. You know what I mean? Like, I just want one of these top 12 running backs. And like I said, I'm just going to dive into them a little bit later on. Like, I would just rather get a wide receiver in that range of where Etienne is going.
Well, what you can do if you want a top 10 running back is do what I did last year, which apparently you can do again this year as well, and just draft Alvin Kamara.
And he's going super late.
Yes, I understand his situation, that he's not actually on the team.
But he's going to play.
He's going to be.
Yeah, people get concerned about those reports. He's going to play week 1. He's going to be there.
Like, he's going 76th overall. He's going behind Rashad White and Joe Mixon. Like, in terms of I would take him over ETN 1v1.
Yes.
But obviously you can wait 30 picks and do it and just grab receivers or a tight end or a quarterback in the meantime.
Right.
But even Rashad White, Joe Mixon, I like him better than I like Mixon. Like, I think if you knew that he was playing from week 1, yeah, maybe he starts to lose a little bit of his workload. And yes, the touchdowns have been bad for him. But I feel like that's something that if someone's super low in terms of touchdowns, like, as long as they're getting opportunities,
They'll
that will flip
the other
back.
way. Yeah, the one thing I will say is that Taysom Hill is still
He's there.
a thing. And Clint Kubiak is now the OC in New Orleans.
Zone running. That's what we want.
And he says that we're going to see things that we've never seen from Taysom Hill this year. What the hell could that be?
Hopefully it's sitting on the fucking bench.
That's got to be the thing, because he's thrown touchdowns, he has caught touchdowns, he's ran them in, he's been taking some end arounds in camp. I think that's partly because Kamara is at home, but I'm with you. Kamara will start. The rushing touchdowns haven't been there for him over the past couple of years. Even the efficiency on the ground hasn't been there for him. He's not as explosive, of course, but he still caught 70 some odd check down passes from Derek Carr.
I think that he caught 70 in the first game that he played.
There's a bunch of I think he had 1 or 2 multiple catch games.
Yeah, I think he had 3 double-digit catch
It's like
games.
10 to 13 and around that range. He's still going to get a ton of targets, and they didn't really do anything at the wide receiver position this year. It's still Olave. They bring in Cedric Wilson. They got Rashid Shaheed. Michael Thomas is
A.T.
not gonna be
Perry.
there. A.T. Perry. Bub Means. How about that guy? So, I mean, Kamara could be number 2 in terms of catches. I don't mind him in this range. I think, certainly rather him than a Chan, and you take the discount there. Kenneth Walker. Like, give me the guy that's going to catch a bunch of passes. I'd rather Kamara than Montgomery, and I think I'd rather Kamara than Aaron Jones too. Like, the Vikings.
We'll get to that tier in a second. I just feel like Kamara is kind of on an island in his own, in my mind.
Especially in a PPR format.
Yeah, and even a half-point PPR. Like, it's just if he can get the uptick in the touchdowns and just have 8, like, all of a sudden, we haven't projected for 6 total touchdowns. Make that 8 or 9, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay. Like 54 receptions, that's probably 95 if he plays all 17 games. So you kind of have to parse that out a little bit. I mean, my projection right now has him as missing time and not having that full workload.
Yeah.
And Kendry Miller, what a hero. Like, the better pick is still Jamal Williams. Like, if you're banking on Kamara not playing, just draft Jamal Williams because he will play.
He didn't play too much last year, but he could. I mean, a couple of years ago, he led the NFL in red zone rushing attempts and touchdowns, so maybe he could fill that role. But I actually kind of like Kendry Miller, not from a. I know we're talking redraft here. I think he's a good buy low in Dynasty because this time next year it could be his backfield.
I mean,
but I think he's going to touch
as
the
someone
field
with
a bit
2
more.
kids, I'm proof I'm not a virgin, so I'm not playing in Dynasty League. Sorry.
But Kendry Miller is a good back, and I think he's going to get more touches this year. He could knock on the door for some. It could be turned into like a 60-40 thing.
So guys that I think that you have overranked. I think you have ETN overranked. I think that you have Mixon overranked. Rashad White overranked. I think you're low on Pacheco and Cook. Kamara, I get it. Like, that's having him at number 19 is just where you have to put him. I would rank aggressively in that format. And I think that it's not that Taylor and Saquon shouldn't be 4 and 5. It's just I think they're so much closer to even down to Cook and Pacheco and those guys that I like, rather than the way that it looks kind of like on a graphic board
Sure.
or on a ranking sheet, like to tier them off, you could almost just have them all on the same line.
Where's Mixon in the ADP? Because I think I have him much higher than, because I've been getting him in the 6th and 7th round in certain drafts.
Mixon's going at pick number 61. So that's after James Cook. That's after Josh Jacobs. That's after Pacheco and ETN, like 20 picks after ETN kind of thing. I just, it feels like ETN to me. It's the double condom pick of the week.
Yeah, he's
Like, I'd rather then wait. Like, could I wait 10 picks and get Kenneth Walker? Yeah, I might take that. I could wait 16 picks and get Kamara. I'd rather roll that dice. It feels to me like Joe Mixon, and he's one of these guys that could breach up really highly if he ends up being the super workload. I just don't think that's going to happen. That I don't really see anything that dissimilar from him than I would with Walker or Aaron Jones or Ramondre or Zamir White. Like, I feel like he's kind of with those guys.
Yeah, he's been a big time player in the passing game over the past couple of years. Is like 50 plus catches. This is like something that you can bank on. And now he goes to a situation where the offensive line is going to be better in Houston than in Cincinnati. And he is the only guy there. And when he was the only guy there in Cincinnati, it's boring. I get it. It's a boring selection, right? I mean, you get Joe Mixon as your RB2. I think that's solid. You don't want to have him as your RB1, as your anchor, your hero. But he should get all the touches there. I mean, Devin Singletary had good games.
I know.
He's not good.
I tried to make Devin Singletary happen many a time
He had
last
some
year.
nice moments last year in that offense, but he's not great. And Dameon Pierce just didn't get any touches last year, so I don't worry about him either.
I would actually look at it in the inverse, that I don't think that he's a good running back too because of the price point. I think if you're going to go like super heavy at the top with receiver, quarterback, and stack everything up, he's actually a good running back one, and build your team out that way. Because I think that if I had a stud running back, and I know you can make the people like, well, if you think he could be a running back one, why? Yes, I understand that point. So I'm talking about like team construction.
Yep.
That if I was going to have a running back too, I would probably just drop and wait another few rounds and take sort of the downside of Mixon, who I think is similar to Jalen Warren or hell, Zach Moss in Cincinnati, like whoever it might be, that Raheem Mostert, and just try to mine production from some of those guys. Hopefully one or two emerges or an injury happens throughout the course of the year. And then I can load up with my, like, because obviously if I have a stud running back as it is, I need wide receivers in the spot, not Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
It's a lot like ETN, like where he's going. He's not a great...
No, RB1. Like,
Yeah.
I will say, like, it's early, but doing some drafts, you're able to kind of get him as your second if he's there in the 7th. I feel like it's a no-brainer pick.
Like, is there really that big of a difference between him and Zamir White?
I think maybe just like from a catch standpoint, the offense may be a touch better. That's it. Just maybe from like an efficiency standpoint, they're probably very similar, and touches they're probably very similar. Like Zamir White's a guy that I actually really like, as you can see in the rankings.
Yeah. You have Zamir White at number 17.
Yeah,
Aaron Jones at number 18. Kamara at 19. David Montgomery. You have Ramondre at number 21. Wasn't Ramondre going as like a top 5 pick last year?
He was, and I don't know.
At running back.
Yeah, at running back, I think he was. But I mean, it's the worst offense in football. He should still catch a bunch of passes, but it's not, Mac Jones dumping them off. I don't know. I think he's a really good back. I have him ranked that low because I don't want to. I just straight up don't want a running back on the worst offense in football, and I think they're going to be one of the worst teams.
Per my projections, here are four other running backs within 10 half-point PPR points of Joe Mixon: Kenneth Walker, David Montgomery, Alvin Kamara, and Kenneth Walker. And Jalen Warren,
Jalen Warren. Yeah, maybe a touch high on Warren, but a lot of catches, I suppose. But he's not the lead, and he's not going to be the lead.
He's better. That's helpful.
He may be, but
he is. To watch him, he is actively
you definitely
better
see it. And a lot of people say that Najee's not explosive. He actually had the second most explosive runs, but when you watch it, you're like, wow, Jalen Warren is better. He looks like the better back. Like, get the ball to that guy. But he is not going to have more carries. He's not going to be the red zone back. He's not going to be the goal line back. And they didn't pick up the 5th-year option on Najee, so I actually think that they're just going to run the hell out of that guy. I think he's going to get a ton of touches this year.
Yeah, my projections have Warren
is
over.
the best. Yeah.
It's not like the bell cow. He's taking
No,
like
but
55% of the work to 45% from
well
Najee.
happen.
Just kind of like the inverse of last year, plus the catches that come along with it. You take him up in touchdowns a little bit, and you're off to the races. Yeah. Aaron Jones, I find very intriguing.
Yeah,
he could be really good in Minnesota.
He could. I really don't know what to do with him. I try to block out injuries, like you said. Like, let's assume everyone's just going to be healthy. But if you look at Aaron Jones over the last couple of years, it's been a stretch. It's a stretch to think that he would have a full season where there's really nobody. There's Ty Chandler, but Minnesota was trying so hard when Madison was just awful, to bring in Cam Akers and then go to Ty Chandler. And now they got a guy in Aaron Jones who looked great down the stretch of the season. In the playoffs, he was phenomenal, right? We know if you told me that Aaron Jones was going to play, I don't know, just 15 games, I would have him ranked a touch higher because of the offense, where it may not be as sling happy. They may just lean on him a little bit if they have a guy like JJ McCarthy or turnover prone Sam Darnold under center.
The Darnold, our king.
Yeah, I'd say there's a good chance of him starting week 1, but he can't take care of the football, and that's going to be what hurts him.
I mean, that's good for fantasy production.
Great for fantasy. Like if he could just pepper, I think that Justin Jefferson is quarterback proof. Like Nick Mullins came in and played 3 games, and Justin Jefferson averaged almost 200 receiving yards.
Just threw to him every play.
And why wouldn't you? And especially if you're Sam Darnold. You may not take that approach if you're J.J. McCarthy, but if you're Sam Darnold and you want to continue to start games in the NFL, get the ball to arguably the best wideout in football.
Okay, so here's a list of guys I'm going to give you right now. You tell me who you like the best. Ramondre, DeAndre Swift, Najee and Warren, Jonathan Brooks, Zach Moss, James Conner.
James Conner.
I think I'm with you.
Everyone just hates drafting James Conner, and I don't know why. He's top 10 running back last year, and now people are excited about Benson that they draft. But the one thing I will say is that, like Aaron Jones, Conner has never – I think Aaron Jones has had healthy seasons, but Conner's never had a full healthy campaign. But
very few running backs play every game.
And when he plays and he's on the field, he's just productive, man. He gets the touches. He catches balls out of the backfield. Kyler is healthy. They got a guy, Marvin Harrison Jr. as an alpha wide receiver. I think the offense is actually going to be pretty decent in Arizona this year.
So this would be the thing. So you have James Conner at number 22, Swift after him, Najee, Pollard, Chubb. We'll talk about Chubb in a second. Yeah. Sideshow, Raheem Mostert, Brooks, Moss, and then Jalen Warren. You're ranking Jalen Warren like he's fucking Warren from Something About Mary. Get him up the list. Let's get Najee down the list a little bit. But Connor is sort of the answer to that question that I just posed with Joe Mixon. Like, don't take Joe Mixon. Just wait. If 30 picks later, 40 picks later, just take James Conner as your running back too.
Yeah.
And then you'll have to take a few more because obviously you're going to take more running backs.
Yeah.
But then you can pepper that middle range of receiver if you want to.
Absolutely. Like, again, that hero RB type strategy in these drafts that I've been doing. Like, I feel like I probably have Mixon ranked aggressively, but as somebody that you can get in the 6th round. You don't get him, you can get James Conner in the 7th round. It's a perfect RB2 type for that type of strategy. And by that point, you already have 3, maybe 4 wide receivers. Maybe you got a tight end early, maybe a rushing quarterback. James Conner is just going to continue to get disrespected. In fact, in best ball formats, Benson's going ahead of him. That's just ludicrous.
That's crazy.
It's nuts. Like, what the hell are we doing?
That's what people do in best ball, though. They're like, oh, I got this guy. He's great. It's like,
new rookie, new shiny
sure
toy.
About that?
Yeah.
Sure.
No, Connor's a solid back. There's a couple here that we can identify a little bit later on, like Gus Edwards and Zeke. Like, I don't think that those guys are sexy picks, but I think that they're going to return value.
Let's talk about Gus Edwards.
Yeah.
Like, he might score 16 touchdowns.
What do the Chargers want to do?
All they want to do is run.
They want to run the football. Yeah, they want to run the football. Harbaugh's back.
I have Gus
Rosen's
Edwards
back.
projected as running back 20.
So you have him way higher than me.
Yeah.
I thought I had him. I was thinking about moving him up a touch.
Listen to this. How would you feel about these numbers for half-point PPR? 205 carries, 900 yards.
Yeah.
Seems
Yeah,
doable.
I think that's what he did last year.
8 touchdowns on the ground.
Yeah.
18 catches
Yeah.
in a touchdown.
Yeah. Catch a game.
Throw in a touchdown.
Yeah.
That would make him number 20 at running back.
Wow.
That's not much.
And he's been doing that. And I know it's not going to be as great of a rushing offense in LA, but Rosen knows him. He brought him over. Very familiar with Gus Edwards. Harbaugh has showed us that he wants to run the rock. I mean, they did that together at Stanford. It happened in San Fran. It happened in Baltimore. I really like Gus Edwards. He's actually one of my favorite picks in drafts because of what we're talking about and how I treat the running back position. And J.K. Dobbins, right, this guy's he hasn't been able to stay healthy at all. Like, rooting for him, but come on. And then if you don't get Gus Edwards
is pick number 124.
I mean,
and that projection that I just
pick.
built with the 200 rushing attempts,
Yeah.
44% of the market rushing share. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, he should get all the touches that he can handle. They're going to throw the football at times, but think about all the pieces that are gone from that offense. I mean, Keenan and Mike Williams and Eckler out of the backfield, Gerald Everett.
It's a bunch of jabronis.
Yeah, a bunch of jabronis.
And yes, he's not a great pass catcher. This we've
No.
seen. However, He also played in an offense that we just talked about that doesn't throw to running backs.
Right.
Maybe
he does.
Maybe Herbert will check down a few times a game to him. Now, I wouldn't expect that,
No.
but that could be a nice hidden bonus playing on a different team.
Yeah, just 2 catches. Can we give him 2 catches a game? Can we give him 36 catches? I mean, that's certainly knocking on the door to be a solid low-end RB2. I mean, I like him. I think the Chargers are going to run the football a lot, and Vidal is another guy that I would take late as just knowing that they want to run the football. Like, if anything happened to Gus Edwards, who is dinged up at the moment, J.K. Dobbins, like, they're going to run the football a lot this year. Like, we have Justin Herbert's pass attempts down significantly, and to the fact that I'm not even really interested in him in quarterback 14, 15. Like,
He might even be going later than that
And he
at
should.
this point. Let's
And he
see.
should.
Passing attempts for the
great
year.
quarterback, but I don't think the attempts are going to be there.
I got, oh my God. Really have to scroll down here. 500 passing attempts is what I have projected for Justin Herbert. That is 2 more than Will Levis, 2 more than Geno Smith, and 2 more than Brock Purdy. I have him behind Anthony Richardson, Deshaun Watson, Derek Carr, Kyler Murray, J.J. McCarthy. But he's way down.
Got to
on the
uptick
list.
Levis. Levis is the super flex quarterback to own this year.
I could see the upside potential with him, most definitely, for a guy who's going that late.
Yeah.
But he might just not be any good.
It's fair. He probably isn't. But, man, they surrounded him with a lot of talent this year, and Hopkins and Ridley and Boyd. And I really like Brian Callahan as a play caller. I thought did some great things with Jake Browning when Burrow got hurt. So, and two running backs that can catch, and Pollard and Spears are going to have 100 combined catches, and they're going to play from behind a lot.
Do you like Pollard or do you like Spears?
I like Spears. This is a touch cheaper. Pollard was a bust for me last year. I mean, he had a good season, but
It was an okay season. He just never scored touchdowns, ever.
and he didn't before with Zeke when he was given the opportunity. I think he was like 2 for 7 at the goal line. And then last year he had 2 fewer red zone rushing attempts than CMC. He had 60 and he scored 5 touchdowns. And I think most of them came in it was 2 or 3 games. There were a lot of games where he didn't score. There's just so many question marks with Pollard for me. Him and Spears, I think, are very similar. I think Pollard's a better back, but I think their skill set is very similar. Is Pollard the third down guy? I don't know for sure. Is he the goal line guy? I'd say maybe, but if he struggles in that goal line role and they decide to go to Spears, then no. And so I would just rather take the cheaper back in Tajay Spears, but ultimately I don't want either of them. I want Will Levis.
DeAndre Swift is going as running back number 21. I just think it's too high with the other players they have on the team.
Yeah, I agree. This is where he finished last year, right? And we just talked about the line and the situation that he had. Yeah, he got some goal line touches taken from him from Jalen Hurts, but he lost his goal line job in Detroit when he was there to Jamal Williams that you mentioned. As of this moment right now, they still have Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson. And so that's another guy where I don't know.
I'd rather just take Roschon
100%.
or take Khalil Herbert for
100%.
free and just hope DeAndre Swift gets hurt again.
Right. You saw the downtick in targets and catches. Don't know for sure if he's the goal line back, and I don't think he's the third down back in that offense too. So we're drafting DeAndre Swift just hoping that he has a similar season as last year, and where's the upside? It's just oh, great, low in RB2, and I think there's, out of all these guys, we're talking about how it could go wrong, it's a high percentage chance of things going wrong for Swift.
Okay, so let's pile through some of these teams right now. The teams that we didn't talk about with unique backfield. So in Carolina, should be a bad team. Jonathan Brooks is drafted. He's going at pick number 88. Chuba Hubbard's going double that at pick 167. I don't think that Hubbard is going to be an insignificant factor on this team. He'll play.
Yeah, he's going to play early too, which is key.
And do we think that Brooks takes over? Yeah.
Yeah.
But is it going to be 80% Brooks when he takes over? Probably not.
It depends. Probably not. You're right. I would say it leans towards no as yes. But if Dave Canales is going to treat him like he treated Rachaad White.
Now, did he treat Rachaad White that way because Rachaad White was so good, or they literally had no other option? They were playing Chase Edmonds at some point.
Yeah, it's a good point. I just don't think Chuba Hubbard's that good.
I think that we kind of sleep on the fact that he's actually okay. He just finds ways to be productive. He does. I wouldn't want him as my starting running back on my football team, but as a backup who can contribute 8 touches a game, I feel like that's the role that they want for him.
Yeah.
And they do seem, obviously it's a new coaching staff, but it did feel like they rode the hot hand last year.
They did, and he was certainly serviceable down the stretch of the season when he overtook Miles Sanders, and Miles Sanders is an afterthought now in the offense. I think it'll play out for Brooks. I have Brooks ranked pretty high because I think that's as like RB 28ish. I think that's like where
That's low for where he's actually going in drafts. He's going, let's see here, yeah.
too early.
He's going
low
20.
20s.
He's going at number 24.
Yeah. I think it's like a patience type thing with him. I won't have any shares of him, but I could see him being like a guy in the second half of the season, like Cam Akers and Javonte Williams in their rookie campaigns, like when it was Akers just getting a little bit of touches, and then all of a sudden he took over in the second half, when it was Javonte Williams splitting with Melvin Gordon, and then all of a sudden he took over in the second half. I think that's something that could happen in this offense, is given the fact that he is coming off the ACL injury, and he may not be full go, but he is clearly the best running back in that room. He's got 3 down potential. He can catch passes out of the backfield. He doesn't have a lot of tread on tires because he played behind Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson in Texas. Like, he would have gone much, I want to say much earlier. The running back class was shit, but he would have went probably late first, earlier in the second, if he didn't suffer that ACL injury. So I think it's like a patience type thing. But do you want a back like that that's not going to get a full workload?
I guess it
until week
depends.
10?
And maybe if you feel confident enough drafting later on in the draft that you have him, and then hopefully he turns into what Breece Hall did 2 years ago,
Yeah, you
where he was
stash
just
him
kind of
all
like
year.
nothing. Oh, this guy's winning me every week.
Boom. And that's possible, right? It's possible that he can fall into 15 plus touches in the last 6 or 7 weeks on a team that finished dead last in points per game, playing from behind, catching balls out of the backfield. It is very possible, but the RB 24, I see 22 sometimes the underdog. It's a very expensive price to pay.
So to recap your 21 through 30, Ramondre, Connors, DeAndre Swift, Najee, Pollard, Chubb, Mostert, Jonathan Brooks, Zach Moss, Jalen Warren. The next 10 on that list are Devin Singletary, the Giants starting running back, we think now. Javonte Williams, still in Denver. You're not buying the Jaleel McLaughlin hype as of yet in terms of ranking. Gus Edwards should be higher. Ezekiel Elliott, Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, who are both on Washington. Tajah Spears, Trey Benson in Arizona, Chase Brown in Cincinnati, and then Tony Gibson, as I like to call him, who is now in New England to take maybe some pass catching game. Although we always thought that he'd be a great pass catcher, that he never caught any passes. It was like, oh, great.
Be interested to see how they use him, because he used to be a wide receiver.
But it never translated in Washington.
I know. Ron Rivera Ron Rivera did not like him, for one. He said multiple times like he wished that he would just run down the field instead of like an east and west type of runner, and then he had him returning punts one time in practice. So I don't know.
So he's like the Justin Fields of New England.
Right. I could see Ramondre being 1 on the team in catches, and Antonio Gibson being number 2 on the catches, team on the catches. So I'm not totally interested in him, because he's not going to get in goal line work on a bad team, but he may finally rack up, I don't know, 50 catches, maybe.
Let's talk Chubb.
Yeah.
Let's talk Chubbies here on the Pat Mayo Experience.
Let's do it. It's tough, man, to gauge.
When do you think he plays?
I would say you're getting into like week 6. I think he lands I think he's on the pup list to start.
If I could assure you he was Nick Chubb in week 7, would you draft him way higher than you have him ranked right now? Or would you actively be targeting him?
Yeah, if you told me he was Nick Chubb, the Nick Chubb we expect and we've seen from week 7 on, I would probably move him up to the Kenneth Walker range.
So like mid-teens.
Yeah, mid-teens. When he's healthy and he's good to go, we'll be ranking him as an RB1.
He's going at pick number 140.
Yeah, I think he's worth the risk.
I think I like gambling in drafts like this on the pure upside. That's why I like Kamara in the mid-70s. I would see no reason, unless you get significant reports that he can't do anything, that this is who you take.
Yeah, and it's not like it's going to hurt you, because
It's
at
late.
pick 140, that's nothing, right? And he could probably only rise from now until the season, but I don't think that much, because I don't think we're really going to see him on the field. Like, he was at practice the other day just walking around, and everyone got excited about that. Like, I don't think he's going to be I don't think he's even touching the field at all until, we get into the season.
Yeah, so I would be targeting him unless you hear something very strongly.
Yeah.
Like, Giovanni Ricci is coming through for you in the backfield.
Yeah,
It's like
league winner.
Ford, it's Foreman, it's Naheem
He could
Hines.
be a league winner.
Yeah, and like I don't think that Ford, Foreman, and Hines are.
No.
Probably be more. I mean, Foreman has a way of like just wiggling his way in and getting like 20 touches in a game. You're like, what's going on?
He's that random guy, like maybe like Chuba Hubbard to start the season, where these guys are like leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns after week 3, but nobody will buy into that. But yeah, he could get the work early and the goal line work early.
So the rest of the running backs to kind of run through, Cincinnati has Zach Moss potentially as their league. It could be Chase Brown. It's probably between those two, probably not Trayvon Williams or Captain America, Chris Evans. But do you like Moss? It seems like you do.
I like Moss more than Brown. Like Ratcliffe has Brown ahead of Moss, and he's got him projected high. They're pretty side by side, but I think that Moss, I don't know, showed us enough last year to lead the team in touches, like on the ground. But I'm not like he's a lesser Joe Mixon, so how can we get excited about him? You know, what I mean? Like he's not gonna be efficient behind that line.
I haven't projected as running back 27. Like it's not bad. It's a flex. Like if you had CMC and then drafted Zach Moss at pick 100, you could really build a nice team in between the bread of that sandwich.
You could, and he should get the goal line work. Cincinnati should be still a decent offense, and the schedule's super tough. The division's tough, but he should get all the work. And what matters to me is drafting backs to goal line backs. Like I like pass catching running backs. Like I get it. Chase Brown may have more work through the air, but at the end of the day,
these are running backs.
I don't care about running backs that didn't get 4 for 54.
I don't mind those guys if they can contribute something else.
And I just don't know what else Chase Brown will contribute.
So do we see the same thing in Dallas with Zeke, Dwaddle, and Deuce Vaughn?
So I just think that Zeke is going to be the goal line back.
I think Zeke's going to be. Zeke was sneaky good last year.
I know, and I think for where I have him as RB34 roughly is probably much higher than the consensus. What we talked about, man, Tony Pollard had 60 red zone rushing attempts in that offense last year, and he couldn't get in. Like, what they missed last year was Zeke, and they should have brought him back. And now they bring him back a year later because they couldn't find anything. Like, Deuce Vaughn they don't use him. He's super tiny. He's not getting goal line work. Rico Dowdle could fall into some, maybe it's a 60-40 with Zeke being the lead. But
what happens if one of these guys gets hurt? How good is the other one? Or is it not? Because like very sneakily, because we have this impression in our mind because for years Dallas had like the best offensive line.
And they just
in
don't
football. They
anymore.
don't. They have like a bottom 5 offensive line.
It's not a
now.
great offensive line. I don't expect Zeke to be efficient. It could look a lot like it did last year in New England or his last year in Dallas, but he always caught a lot of passes in Dallas, a ton, and he caught a lot last year too. The only year he didn't was his last year when Pollard broke out. But I expect him to go back and be the first down running back, to be the goal line back. I don't think we're swapping him off the field in third down situations for Rico Dowdle. Like, that's not a lock either. So Zeke may not be efficient, but he may flirt with 200 touches. He may be top 5, top 7 in red zone rushing attempts. Dallas is still going to score a lot of points too this year. They're gonna be a good offensive squad. I would say if Zeke got hurt, I wouldn't view Dowdle as like knocking on the door as like a solid RB2, and I think Zeke could be a solid RB2 even without Dowdle.
So he's going at running back number 40. So here are guys going ahead of Zeke right now. Gus Edwards, which I would agree with. Eckler is. And Brian Robinson.
Yeah, so they're both going ahead. I don't know. I'd rather Zeke.
With a quarterback that runs.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Right. I'd rather Zeke.
Blake Corum is going ahead of Zeke.
No thanks.
Jerome Ford is going ahead of Zeke.
No chance.
Trey Benson is going ahead of Zeke.
No chance.
Spears, Singletary, Pollard, Mostert, and Javonte Williams.
I don't like any of those guys.
You like Javonte?
I have Javonte here out of the talent, but if I was to rank him based on Sean Payton's love, he'd probably be RB 150. He doesn't like him, man. He doesn't like Javonte Williams. And we saw it last year. We saw it last year with Williams, and we saw when he didn't like Russell Wilson what happened there. I think that Javonte Williams could be a surprise cut. I think he could be moved. I really do, man. McLaughlin or McLovin or whatever, they got him those touches last year. He was cutting in. That's what you should do, and you should rank. You should put McLovin in.
I'm not ranking.
You should just rank anyways and do the fun names that you do. I think it's Samaje Perine's still in the squad. They drafted a guy.
I think Perine's the guy that gets cut.
And that would make sense. It's in the final year of his deal, but I think he caught like close to 50 passes last year, man. Like
That's
he
fine.
played
Get
a
him out of
role
there.
on that. I agree. Like get him out of there.
If Perine, because I was reading a thread, I forget. I think it was Rich Rebar who put it out. It might not be. I might be misquoting it, but they made a very good point because there is a lot of like Chase McLaughlin like buzz.
Yeah, I mean he's taking first team reps.
Yeah, and
for whatever reason.
Because I mean he looks explosive, but the point was made that like Perine and Javonte played the majority of the passing downs because they actually pass blocked.
Yeah,
McLaughlin just never pass blocked. He only ever ran routes, and that's not someone traditionally that you'd see as a 3-down back.
Yeah, I think looking at my rankings, I'm kind of disgusted. I feel like I should lower Javonte Williams. I just don't want any of those guys anyways, and I'd just take the cheaper back maybe in McLaughlin. But it's going to be some sort of rotation with a rookie quarterback and no weapons. They have no weapons. Like Cortland Sutton's their guy. Like, come on, right? So it's going to be a really bad football team.
I'm trying to go through like what else we can talk about with kind of split backfields. The Miami backfield is interesting with A-Chain, Wright, and Jeff Wilson and Mostert. I'd just rather draft Mostert.
Right, same.
He might have like 20 touchdowns again.
That's the thing. Like, I don't want the flashy running back. I want the guy that...
It's fun to own A-Chain.
It is fun, and I will have some best ball shares, but that's like a coward thing to say. I'm just not going to draft him in the second round. And he's going to have some explode. I'll play him in DFS. I'll take his over on some receiving yard props or things like that. But Raheem Mostert is going to have a role again because McDaniel, when he came over from Shanahan's offense, what was the first thing he did? He acquired Raheem Mostert. And they had him in San Fran, and they said, dude, we're going to use you the same way. And that's all they've done. And I just can't see, unless I know he's older and some injuries happen, but if he's healthy, I think it's like a full-on kind of split probably, but I think he's getting the touches in the red zone. And again, that's very important.
Devin Singletary is theoretically the lead for the Giants. Do you care?
I don't care one bit.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't care that Saquon was the lead for the Giants, so why would I care about Devin Singletary? That's honestly how I felt about Saquon. I was like, I like this guy. He's super talented, but he's playing on arguably the worst offensive team in football with arguably the worst offensive line, and he's churning out 3.7, 3.9 yards per pop. So Singletary, nah, man, I can't do it. I would take Tracy Jones as like a guy, maybe catch some passes at the last pick of my draft.
Eckler or Robinson? I can tell by your rankings who you like better. You like Robinson better.
I like Robinson better.
Is that because Austin Eckler will be too busy podcasting to actually play in games?
I just think it's the rushing. Like Eckler is not a between the tackles type of runner. He can catch a bunch of passes. I'd say in a full point PPR league, I would certainly lean Eckler, but certainly Jaden Daniels and double-digit rushing touchdowns in the last 2 years of college.
What's his check down rate to running backs? I assume it's very low.
Yeah, I don't know offhand. Watching him, there wasn't a lot of checkdowns in that offense
because you didn't have to. So I mean, that's not like a 1v1 comp,
right?
But if that's not something you already do, it's harder to learn that.
It is harder to learn that. Plus, again, right, we see with Lamar and all these other rushing quarterbacks that we've discussed, they're more willing to use their legs to get that extra 3 or 4 yards. But I think Brian Robinson Jr., I think he's a good back, and he was more involved through the air last year than you would think with Antonio Gibson on the squad. But I just, the goal line stuff is important in the red zone and being the lead back. And, I project these guys, I'd say, from a week-to-week basis, we're looking at Brian Robinson as like 14 carries and maybe 2 catches, and Eckler like 5 carries and maybe 5 catches. Like I don't know, like neither of them are too exciting.
5 catches would be good. I just feel like it's going to be under that.
It's not going to be Herbert. Like there's no way he's going to flirt with those type of numbers that he had with the Chargers over the past couple of years. No way.
Yeah, and I don't see him being the goal line. I'm with you. I see Brian Robinson, and I see Jaden Daniels stealing a bunch of touchdowns.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
All right. Is there any other running back that you wanted to talk about? I think we did a good job of parsing through everyone.
No, that's it. I guess I did gloss over Zamir White, my love for him.
Yeah, you have him at number 17.
I do have him pretty high.
You should really rank him above A-Chain, by the way.
Yeah, I probably should.
You don't like A-Chain. You like Zamir White. Just do it.
Maybe I'll put him like at 12 or something. Why not? I think that he's going to be top 10 in touches. Antonio Pierce showed us when he took over, they want to run the ball. At first, it was with Jacobs, and then when Jacobs was hurt, we had the 4-game sample size with Zamir White, averaged 22 attempts per game, 3 catches per game.
That Alexander Madison is there?
No, he sucks.
I agree that he sucks, but that has not stopped any team from using him in the past.
Nah, he's trash, man. He's brutal. I could see that guy being cut, and they just go with Dylan Lobby, who they drafted in the 6th round. He's going to get all the touches that he can handle. They'll have some 2 tight end sets, with Bowers and Mayer. The one concern I have is Aiden O'Connell, right? Like he's the guy that can make all this go sour and him not being able to move the football. But if you have a guy like Gardner Minshew who can move and lean on his veterans like Adams and Jacoby Myers, like I just love the touches, the opportunity for him. And again, it's to the offensive line. They also drafted like Jackson Powers, who's like
good name.
Right? Great name.
It's just like in golf that Jeff always thinks that Seamus Power hits the ball 400 yards. And he absolutely does not. It's a great name.
No. It's like somebody that have dangle in hockey, you would assume, and he just can't. He's got no stick handling skills.
There is a running back on the depth chart for the Raiders named Sincere McCormick, which is just a great name.
That is a good name.
The Raiders love a great name.
do.
Britton Brown, Tyreek McAllister, Tyreek spelled a way I've never seen it before, and Sincere McCormick. These are the guys to play in the preseason.
Those are the guys. Give them all the touches that they can handle. But yeah, Zamir White should be a bell cow back inside this offense. It's a good O-line. I'm in.
He's a guy that could win you your league,
or in the 7th or 8th round.
Or he could be an absolute bust. But 7th or 8th round, who cares?
Yeah, volume at that point. You want to lead on running back that can catch as well and get the goal line work. That's why I like him.
All right, I'm doing those divisional previews with Jake. Most of those are up right now, and everyone can check out your rankings at FTN.
Yeah, FTNfantasy.com. They're all up.
Go get them. Chris Meaney. At Chris Meaney, thanks for being in the studio.
That has been a great plan. Great time, bud.
You good people out there need to go to Underdog Fantasy right now. Use code Mayo for a deposit bonus of up to $250. Smash a like to this episode, sub to the channel, and sub to the audio podcast if you want more fantasy football coming your way. We're getting there. We're 2 months out, so it's time to start taking this seriously. All right? I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!